This is our country now. You hear me, Catherine?
Completely appalling, and I'm sorry to say this, completely predictable situation. Indeed, I can say it's predictable because I said exactly this sort of thing would start happening 7 years ago or so in my book, The Strange Death of Europe. It's horrible to be proved right in such circumstances because you don't want to be proved right about something like this. You want people to listen and change their policies.
The UK is currently being pushed to the edge of an outright civil war. The tensions between people of different backgrounds and the blatant two-tier policing of protesters are the ones that are doing the pushing. Douglas Murray was quick to comment on the situation. Let's watch what he has to say.
Yes, this all started after a young man, a 17-year-old, stabbed to death 3 girls at a Taylor Swift-themed dance party in the town of Southport. And the sense clearly in the immediate aftermath of that, this is just an observation, was that the authorities were withholding the identity of the suspect. Now, there are some reasons why they might do that.
Maybe because they knew what this would lead to.
But obviously, tensions locally were extremely high, feelings were extremely high. And the way to try to control the information obviously completely backfired, as you would expect it to. And that's led to these riots across city after city in the UK. It's extremely disturbing. These riots of themselves provoked counter riots where identifiably Muslim young men, some armed, have been also shown on camera attacking people in the streets.
And it's too late to say that you want to stop to this. They're already here, and it seems like different factions clashing and rioting is starting to become a commonality now. But Douglas was not bluffing when he said that armed Muslims are looking for trouble. Take a look at these anecdotes showcasing the absolute savagery that happened the last few days on the streets of UK.
He's flat out.
Just look at how huge that mob chanting Allah is. And they don't look very charitable neither. I don't really feel confident about the future of the UK moving forward. And Douglas seems to agree with my sentiment here.
And this is really just a completely appalling, and I'm sorry to say this, completely predictable situation. Indeed, I can say it's predictable because I said exactly this sort of thing would start happening 7 years ago or so in my book, The Strange Death of Europe. It's horrible to be proved right in such circumstances because you don't want to be proved right about something like this. You want people to listen and change their policies. But, you know, the last few days have shown the Labour government refusing to concede that there is anything other than what they call far-right violence going on. They claim that there isn't a two-tier policing system in the UK, which everybody with their own eyes can see is not the case. Clearly, there is a two-tier policing system in the UK.
This is just unexcusable. They lie that the two-tier isn't there, when it's so obvious they're terrified the arrests of Muslims will lead to even more unrest and tension, because they are this poor and innocent marginalized group that needs to be saved. Just look at this insane anecdote here. A white Briton is being detained, probably for posting something on Twitter, which the British police is known for, and this while he's literally being attacked by Muslim protesters. Look at how avoidant the police officer is to engage with them. This is beyond ridiculous. And this reminds me of that stereotype of moms that don't even flinch when the annoying cousin that came in visit is burning your whole room down. But if you look at him the wrong way, she'll scream at you for it.
One of the interesting things about that is that all of these areas are, among other things, areas where migration has continued to increase and joblessness has gone up. Now, just think of those two factors, anyone watching. You keep forcing immigration onto these areas, and you do nothing to improve the lot in these areas. Of course, nobody should be on the streets. The unbelievable hooliganism and thuggery of recent days should repel everybody.
It should repel everybody, but it seems to be attracting the Muslims.
But, you know, very often when there is some kind of violence or unrest, we hear political leaders and the wise heads in the commentariat saying we need to address underlying causes. Why has nobody said that in recent days?
And you're so right. Remember the media coverage in 2011, very different to what we're seeing now, and also throughout the BLM unrest that we saw not too long ago. Again, there was a great deal of sympathy for those who were behaving violently and certainly weren't peacefully protesting. Now, there are various segments of the left in the UK blaming X, formerly Twitter, for inciting violence. But Douglas, it's one of the few places where you can see what is happening on the ground without that media spin.
I understand why the left wouldn't want to expose the true savagery that has been happening in these protests. It's because they don't want to escalate the pre-existing tensions and extreme discriminations of Muslims that are peaceful. But the truth will still remain. This country is not leading towards a bright future. Here's how the left is trying to cover this up.
I've just seen a report from another so-called mainstream channel in the UK where the quite clearly the journalists are trying not to reveal part of the story. What they're trying not to reveal is what they call Asian men in the area intimidating and harassing journalists. Well, these aren't, once again, you get back to the endless euphemism and lying that is just prevalent across our media. These are not, Hong Kong residents.
What do you mean? They were just saying, "Hi, Mom, I'm on TV."
Who have decided to go out and threaten people. They are, regrettably, organized Muslim groups. And, they're being whipped up by people, presumably in their community, but also by left-wing and other activists, obviously by the people on the street as well, to come out in force. Now, the idea that the answer to that is to crack down on Twitter, X, is an absolute case study of the failure of the political class in the UK. I remember in 2017 when 3 Muslim men went across London Bridge slitting people's throats and shouting, "This is for Allah." And the mayor of London and the then Prime Minister, Theresa May, came out and said that we need to address online radicalization. And then Theresa May set up somebody to look into the definition of extremism. What have they actually done in all of these years? Absolutely nothing.
This is just the ridiculousness of the authorities in this country. They arrest people for posting the incorrect post on Facebook and rationalize it by saying that it could lead to violence, but they are so visibly soft on violent Muslim protests. Even going so far as to threaten Americans for posting their unhinged frustrations on the World Wide Web. This is what we have come to.
And it'll be the same with this. They'll lock some people up and they will demonize all sorts of people and they'll cover for others, but they will do nothing to address this. The British public have been begging for years for consecutive governments to bring down immigration and to increase opportunities in the UK. Not only were they not listened to, they were reviled, insulted, and much more.
And locked up for being angry and posting on Facebook.
It also needs to be said, each of the towns in which these awful riots have been occurring are all places that are resonant with huge crimes that were covered up by almost everybody in authority. I'm thinking of what are called the grooming gangs, but are the rape gangs, which struck in Rotherham, in Rochdale, in town after town, whose names are back in the news now. And obviously there's no excuse for the rioting. Why does nobody in government, and a Labour government at that, not listen to these people, at least find out what has gone so badly wrong in these areas, that reports of who carried out this atrocity in Southport at the dance class for children, that could ignite a country? It doesn't suggest to me that the country is in a healthy state.
The UK government can't continue to handle the immigration crisis so poorly and expect people to not be mad on social media and in public places. You can't have both. But it seems like this is what they are trying to do, which is why they literally started arresting people for Facebook posts. I've still yet to get over this reality. And the funny, or maybe not so funny thing, is that Douglas talked about a similar incident in another interview 8 years ago.
Not just because of the attacks or because of the identity of the attackers, but because of the immediate instinct of the police to cover over what had happened, to try not to identify it, because identifying it was scarier than actually dealing with it. And that points to a pathology in our own societies, I'd say. But the same things happen in Sweden. The same things happen in other countries. It's that fear, and it is a very understandable thing on one level, and yet this understandable fear of generalizing about peoples, or of tarring a whole community or a whole set of communities with this sort of crime, actually meant that men got away with rape. And I think there are things in all of these stories that we can do very little about, and there are things we can do a lot about. And
like, for example, cracking down on the big buzzword that is Islamophobia and letting discourse to happen.
And we can do a lot about making sure that civil society and the arms of the state, like the police, are not so browbeaten that they just can't even investigate the rape of a girl.
Well, I mean, my original point about ostrich parasitic syndrome, I mean, is really apt here, because it demonstrates how this is really a battle of ideas. I mean, as you probably know, there are many Islamic thinkers and Islamic leaders who've argued that the way that and now I'm speaking as one of them, we are going to conquer and defeat the West is through three ways: through using your miserable freedoms against you, through the womb of our women, right, through demographic realities, through fertility rate differences, and then through hijra, through immigration, right?
Luckily for them, since we are the all too forgiving and sympathetic Europeans and Westerners, we welcomed them with our arms wide open, and we didn't sit down to really think about the questionable backgrounds of most of these people until it was already too late.
So these sort of three-pronged attacks are already dangerous, but then you add to that the cocktail of delusional thinking, of parasitized brains that are unable to even instigate a survival instinct to protect their values. Now you've got the perfect storm for what we're seeing in the West, right? I mean, typically throughout evolutionary history, you've got one group of men that want to get to the women of the other group of men, and the thing that's stopping them is that this other group of men are not very keen on giving up their women, and therefore we've got this evolutionary battle that ensures that we will both go out fighting. What's happening in the West is that through this parasitized way of thinking, we are allowing our own demise. We're walking to the abyss of infinite darkness. How do we inoculate people against this endless forms of full thinking?
Well, history says that either one side changes their mind or we just go to war. As simple as that. But let's see what Douglas has to say about it.
Well, there's no one or any easy answer to that. But let me row back a second on one point you made about what you termed the hijra, the mass migration. This is a really, to my mind, I've just finished a book that does come out in the spring on this, which will be announced shortly, on the migration issues of recent years in Europe in particular. And I'm totally obsessed with this issue because I think that there are misunderstandings about it on all sides. And one is that this is in any way an organized movement, that it's organized from where people are leaving from, or that it's organized from the countries that are accepting people. And in actual fact, to look over the post-war up to the present migration into Europe in particular is just a catalogue of mistakes, of failed ideas, of failed politicians, of weakness.
And with that, everything that needed to be noted was said. We'll have to see how things evolve over time. Hopefully we can find a reasonable resolution. That's all I had for today. If you want to watch some of our other videos, you can check these two out and watch how Douglas faces off some angry activists for revealing the truth. We'll catch you in the next one.